Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 18. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the athletes, coaches, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank those of you who have liked, shared, subscribed, and commented on the show. Your continued support allows us to bring on expert level guests and share more, just like our guest today. I also want to thank Cerberus Strength for bringing you this episode for free. Trusted since 2012, Cerberus is making the best strongman, powerlifting, and strength sports equipment and accessories, ensuring the ultimate competitive edge. Every one of their products is tried, tested, and proven by top-level athletes worldwide. Whether it's competing on the big stage at World's Strongest Man or training at home in the gym, Cerberus Strength equipment is reliable, durable, and of course, strong enough to handle all your training goals and needs. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use our promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. Hey, in this week's episode, I am joined by another friend of mine, another former Georgetown Iron Hoya, Trevor Williams. Trevor is the Associate Athletics Director for Strength and Conditioning at Sam Houston State University, where he oversees over 450 student athletes who compete across 17 varsity sports. At Sam Houston State, Williams directly oversees the training for the Bearkats Baseball, men's basketball, volleyball, and golf programs. Williams arrived at his current position after 2 stints as an assistant strength coach at the University of Delaware. He has also spent time as an assistant strength coach at Georgetown, as well as head strength coach at the Potomac School in Washington, D.C., after first starting his career at his alma mater, the University of Delaware, as an intern. A former University of Delaware linebacker, Trevor has also competed in both strongman and push-pull competitions over the course of his career. I'm excited to have him on today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Trevor Williams. What's going on, everybody? I'm excited. I'm joined by another Iron Hoya, of course, and actually was there right when I was there. We were 2 passing ships, though, unfortunately. Trevor Williams, what's going on, man?
Hey, Nick, how you doing, man? Everything's good down here in Texas. Getting cold.
You got the Texas accent a little bit, too.
A little bit. Been down here for almost 6 years now, so it's starting to make its way into my brain, I guess.
It suits you well. 6 years, I forgot it's been that long now, so that's awesome, man. Hey, so I don't want to waste any time. I want to get right into it. Kind of get into your background. How'd you first kind of get involved in the strength game, lifting, training? Like, what sports did you play growing up to get you to this point?
Oh man, I played almost everything. I'm the youngest of 2 other brothers. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and played baseball, played lacrosse, played football, wrestled. So I have a really wide array of sports that I played up until high school. And then when I got into high school, I really focused on lacrosse, wrestling, and football. I went to University of Delaware and played football there for 3 years. I ended up tearing my ACL, and there were some complications behind that. So I retired after 3 years of playing football up there. And that's when my strength and conditioning career really started. It really was because of the injury and I think really the lack of training that I had gotten previously made me realize that strength and conditioning is something that really could have at least lowered my chances of getting hurt. I really wanted to be part of the program after I tore my ACL and I did my rehab. So I worked with the athletic trainers and ended up working in the weight room as an intern through actually the athletic trainers to start my career. After a few months, there was an intern spot that opened with the strength and conditioning program at Delaware. I interned for just about 9 months. And my journey I took a really roundabout way of getting to where I am. I didn't do a GA. Unfortunately, when the GA opened at Delaware, I couldn't get back into school. My undergraduate was subpar, very subpar. So the strength coach at the time, Jason Bullia, decided that he would go ahead and take the GA stipend and resources and actually just pay me as a part-time assistant. We'll call it a part-time assistant because I think I was only making $9,000 a year or something like that. So I got thrown right into it. Right after being an intern with that staff, and learned a lot. Learned how much I didn't know very early on in my career, which motivated me. I spent, let's see, I'm probably not going to get this right, but spent about 2.5 years as an assistant at Delaware. We had a change at the director level. Augie Morelli came in. Augie looked at me and my resume and said, hey, you've been here for undergraduate, intern, and you've been an assistant here for give or take 5 years. You've been in Newark, Delaware. And in order for you to grow, you need to get out of Delaware. I have a great program down at Georgetown. I'll recommend you go down there and interview with those guys. It'll be a great opportunity for you to learn and grow, build your resume. And he actually said, give it 2 years, get certified through the CSCCA, and then call me. So I went down to Georgetown, as everyone's probably heard from a lot of the other Iron Hoyas that have been on here. It was a life-changing experience for me. Carl Johnson, Mike Hill, Sean Foster, those were really the staple of the staff while I was down there. I learned a ton. I learned a ton about strength and conditioning. I learned a ton about coaching, but I learned a ton about the iron game, the iron bug, the lifestyle of being in a weight room, being under a bar, things like that. And that's what really kicked it into high gear for me. I realized that I didn't want to do anything else other than be in a weight room. That was huge. So I spent my 2 years down at Georgetown, got my CSCCA, got certified, called Augie. Augie said, hey, I'm transitioning out. I'm going to be in more of an administrative role, but Brian Hess is going to take over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set you guys up on an interview. If he likes you and you really want to come back to Delaware, then interview and we'll see what happens. So I interviewed with Brian Hess, who again was very close with Augie, came up through Georgetown with Augie. Him and I sat down for probably 2 hours and just talked. It was an interview. We had a few interview questions, but we just really talked. And to be honest with you, we talked a lot about Georgetown and the experiences we had at Georgetown and how they shaped us and who we are as people and coaches. And after that, he hired me back up at Delaware, which was, again, every time you make a move, you learn some new things about yourself and the environment that you live in. Delaware had changed a lot, which was cool. I came back as an alum and realized that there was a lot of progress being made on campus, and it made me proud, and it was exciting for me to be back there. We had brought sore necks into both of our weight rooms, so we rebuilt 2 weight rooms up there. So there's a lot of cool things going on. Delaware taught me a lot because at the time I was 26 and I was the oldest one in our department. Brian Hess was the director and he was 25. We had a GA who was 22 and another assistant that was 24, 25, and Melissa Bolt, I think, was again in her mid-20s too. So it was a young staff. And at the time, the Delaware football team was making it to national championships. 2007, 2010, they had made it to the national championship, had lost both years, but we were a top-ranked FCS football program. Our basketball programs were above and beyond the years that we had Elena Deladon. I was fortunate enough to coach her and went to a Sweet 16. Our men's basketball made it to the tournament. Field hockey had started to win big. I think a few years after I left, they actually won the national championship. So it was a great time to be at Delaware. But, we look back and Coach Hobbs and Packer and Coach Hess are all on a text chain together still. And we reminisce and look at how crazy it was, how young we were. And 90% of our program was about, hey, is this going to be fun? Is this going to be, is this something that kids are going to buy into? Is this something that we're going to have fun doing? Because the X's and O's, Hess is a big program guy, and he loves that side of it, and he kind of made us realize how important it was. But at the end of the day, we all sat down when it came to programming and said, okay, this is what we need to get done. These are the things that are important to the program, important to our student athletes. Okay, now how do we incorporate that into making sure that it's an environment that's competitive and fun and student athletes want to come back to every single day. So that was a great opportunity. I learned a lot. I was there for, let's say, probably about 3 more years. Brian Hess came down to Sam Houston State, followed Coach Keeler. Our football coach came down here, and Coach Keeler's first hire was Brian Hess. Hess and I spent a year apart. I spent a year back at Delaware trying to figure out, things up there. And I think it came to a realization personally that, I needed to get out of Delaware. I needed to get out of Delaware again. I was getting very comfortable. So I called Hess and I said, hey, if you have anything that opens up, I would love to come down. He said, listen, the first opportunity that we have, I want to bring you down here. I think we work well together. He had a few tasks that he wanted to put on my plate when I got down here. Coaching baseball was a big one. Baseball in Texas is huge. We had just hired a baseball coach who, really, really wanted a high level of training. He put a lot of emphasis on strength and conditioning. So the opportunity opened up. Hess called me, said, hey, listen, you want to come down and interview? I said, sure. We went to the Walker County Fair and Rodeo, saw bull and bull riders up close for the first time, scared the daylights out of me. He took me up to a place called Leona's General Store. If anybody ever comes to Texas to visit me for any reason, I will buy you a steak the size of your face. It is a Texas ribeye. I had a Texas ribeye, probably about 32 ounces. It was crazy. I literally took my shirt off in his car on our drive home because I had the meat sweats. I looked at it, I said, you know what, this is great. This is where I want to be. Let's do this up. Let's do this up. So that's kind of the journey of how I got down to Sam Houston. There's a longer story. Hess left, and now I became the director. But that's really how I got my beginning in strength and conditioning.
No, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces of it, obviously, since we've stayed in touch, and to hear Augie's advice coming back and forth, I wish I kind of got the same, because as you know, I stayed at Salisbury for basically 6 years in a row. And I had the opportunity to stay at Georgetown or go back, and I just wanted to coach. So I ended up staying. But to think that if I had a gap in between and go back and kind of see how everything would have advanced when I was gone, it could have completely changed the career. So it's cool to see that you still found your roots and you went back to it, but there was still advancement. It's nice to have a program and a department that continues to build on and is not just stagnant. But I want to get a little bit more into that change when Hess left a little bit later, but you touched on something when you guys were talking about programming and the competitive side and making it fun. I know you, maybe our audience doesn't know you as well. The Iron Hoyas know you pretty well. Your enthusiasm and your energy in the weight room is infectious. I've never seen you have a down day with your athletes or when we're just hanging out. So what kind of continues to drive your day in and day out, in this profession? It's very daunting. like a lot of things happen, coaching changes, like getting fired for whatever reason, like, or no reason whatsoever. What drives you and kind of personally motivates you to be your best version of yourself every day, or come in with a positive attitude for your athletes all the time?
You just something just sparked this in my mind. I think most of people who know us probably know of Todd Hammer. Todd Hammer was a strength coach at Robert Morris University, and I put on probably the top 3 strength coaches I know. I've never worked with him. This is all through just reaching out to him, being in weight rooms with him. He got fired from Robert Morris, and I know that I don't know the whole story, but he had written an article and it said, there are 2 types of strength coaches out there: those who've been fired and those who will be fired. And that it scared me, but then it motivated me. It made me realize that, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired going 100 miles an hour. I'm always going to protect the athletes when it's right. There is a balancing act, and that's what I've learned a lot about being an administrator is you have to balance getting the coaches what they need and what they expect. The baseball program, it's not my team. It's Coach Sirianni's team. I'm there to support his vision, his approach. So that's really important. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm supporting the athletes. I will fight tooth and nail if I think they need to be training 3 times a week to get 3 times a week training in. My energy, I don't know. I'm getting my master's right now in higher education administration. Like I said, I never went through a normal GA route, but I'm taking a class right now. It's called career advising. And one of the first exercises we did was, what is work? She asked, what is work? And I said, while I understand work helps satisfy your financial needs and taking care of food, water, shelter, supporting your family, for me, work is fun. Work's not work. You don't work a day in your life. If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And while you have your good days and your bad days, I still wake up every morning and say, man, I get the opportunity to go in and train these young athletes. I get the opportunity. It's an opportunity for me. And I'm blessed with that opportunity. So it's that motivation. The other side is every coach out there needs to understand that athletes are the best bullshit gauge you have. If you come in and you are not 100% on your game, especially when you're high energy, especially when you set the standard that, hey, listen, nobody's going to out energize me. The day that you come in and you're not on your game, they're going to be the first ones to call you out. And that creates pretty much the temperature of the room. I could walk out of a meeting with my administrative group and hear the worst news ever and have to walk right into a volleyball lift and say, hey, listen, whatever, I got to wipe the slate clean. And I got to give these athletes what they expect from me. And sometimes that's, taking a second, sit in my office and just trying to breathe through it. Sometimes it's, hey, taking that negative energy and turning into positive energy, which is funny because athletes will call me out on that too. Man, coach is pissed. Like, yeah, but we're still gonna have fun. We're gonna get after it. So while they see through it, what I give them can't be any different day to day. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge as you get further into strength and conditioning and you've been coaching longer, especially at one spot, and you start to feel comfortable with, okay, these are the systems that I have to work around and deal with. It becomes a little less about the X's and O's and more about management. Management is huge. Management of how you manage your athletes. They're 18 to 21 year old, 18 to 21 year olds who come in every day with a different attitude, with a different mindset, with a different emotional scale that you have to gauge in order to get the most out of them. Because I'm only getting 3 hours out of the week with these athletes. So, if they come out from practice and they just got, tongue lashed at practice, man, I still got to get work done. We can't slow down for that. And so it's managing that. Sometimes it's changing up what you got to do for the day. Sometimes it's just changing up the warm up. Sometimes it's changing up the music. Sometimes it's changing up, I throw an intern in there and say, hey, you got them today, or you get this group, or I give the warm up to a senior and say, hey, listen, what do you guys want to do today? Because sometimes having that freedom, especially after a day where they may have just gotten chewed out at practice, say, what do you guys want to do? Oh, we want to roll and stretch. Okay, cool. We're going to roll and stretch. We're going to do that for 5-10 minutes, and then let's get under a bar and do a barbell warm up, and then let's get going. We don't need to be here 2 hours. Let's go. Right. So it's managing that. But doing it with great enthusiasm. Like I said, athletes are going to see through you. So, you can't bullshit your way through a session. Kids are smart. Kids have a great emotional IQ when it comes to other people. They read situations well. While they can't control their own emotions very well, they are very, very affected by the emotions of other people, especially when they can read into them. So, it's very important. It's something that I don't have to try to do anymore. I come in and, you put a fresh pot on, you have a cup or two of coffee, you get ready for the day. And when those athletes walk in the door, it's game time, and it's fun. Like I said, it's fun. It's not work. It's fun.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I knew a lot of that, but it's cool to hear kind of how you address, like, on the fly when situations are coming with athletes, like coaches, or even how you have to resolve situations and still be ready for them. Because like that, it takes time, and that's kind of the art of the coaching side of it, where what's on the page, and like you talked about with Hess, like you guys are deep in the program, but you also have to be able to sit there and decipher how they're feeling, like how practice went, like the stresses that they're going under, so that you can make it the most optimal program at that time. Because otherwise everybody would just be really great at programming, and that would be it. If they were just robots and they did it exactly the same way every single time, and you can't. And then the other thing I was thinking about too, like, and I don't think a lot of young coaches do this, is there's expectations on both sides. Like, we expect the athletes to come in and be hyped up, be ready to go, be attentive, there's attention to detail, consistency, and everything. But we expect those things from them. Like, we should expect them, or they should expect things from us as well. Like you were talking about, where, hey, I'm coming in every time. Like, my time is here for you. Everything I'm doing is for your guys' benefit right now. Like, if we're not doing that, then we're doing a disservice to them. And it's hypocritical for us to expect something out of them that we're not going to give back. So
yeah, and I'll tell you this, it's cliche. And me and you, before we started, talked about this in kind of a different perspective, but it's relationship building. When I got down here, it was 2 coaches in 17 sports. And we were big on, hey, listen, get to know your athletes. And he's like, man, let's say an even split, we're splitting 400 athletes. That's 200 people that you got to learn, you got to know. And I said, man, you can't get to know all of them. But as I've gone through coaching, I've realized that that's kind of a cop-out. It takes 5 minutes a day, to get, just a few people to get to understand them on a soup. And I don't mean, hey, get to know everything, their wants and their needs and their desires and things like that. But, getting to know them, just getting to understand the basics that are going to make you a more effective coach. I have baseball guys. They're very, we call it operating at a 5. They operate at a 5, right? They don't jump and hoot and holler, but if you can come in and get under a bar and squat, with everything you got for that day, from what I'm asking you to do, that's all I need, right? I think that sometimes there's a misconception that, hey, listen, we want to be we want to be the thermostat, right? We don't want to be the thermometer, or we want to be the thermostat, right? So we want to raise the energy level. Well, you got to understand, not all of your student athletes are going to be there, especially when you work with female and male athletes alike. Females train in a very different way. Sometimes they train the same way. I have some females that will literally put chalk under their eyes and slap themselves in the face before they do cleans. And that's awesome. I love it. We have other girls that, are scared. We have baseball guys that are scared to clean because they're afraid, because they've heard that, oh, it's going to hurt my elbow, or it's going to hurt my shoulder, and it's okay. Well, how do I now I know that about the athlete. How do I now approach that athlete different than I will the group that does come in here, hair on fire, let's get ready to go? Because I think you'll see it too, as you coach more and you really step back, that some of the people that are hair on fire, man, they operate kind of in a different realm, which could be counterproductive sometimes, right? You say, hey, listen, today I'm going to give you an athlete choice on dumbbell bench. And a guy who's down here benching 80s sees a bunch of guys down there benching hundreds, and for a fact that you're not going to be able to get hundreds, but you have to communicate with them. Hey, man, listen, not a smart jump, because we need to get our reps in for the day. If we don't get our reps in, man, you're losing reps. Somebody's picking those reps up. So it works on both ends of the spectrum. Your high tempo guys, man, sometimes that energy can be misguided. You have to figure out how to recenter their energy. On the other side, there are people that just are a very calm, cool, even keel, who might not like the weight room, but as you talk to them and you communicate with them, they understand the importance of it. Doesn't mean that they have to come in and outwardly show that they like what they're doing. But listen, I say, come and get your work done. Get your work done. However you go about doing that, get your work done. All right. So yeah, it's a little bit about relationship building, but at least knowing, it's a cop out to say, I have too many athletes. No, I use that for so many years. You use it for, some kids you just can't reach. Nope. Because guess what? I'm not going to change if they have life issues and life drama. I'm not going to change that, right? But what I can change is the hour that I have them, right? Can you get this done for me? And if you can't get it done, what can you get done for me, right? And I mean, I've been in a situation where you just can't connect. You can't do it. It just does not work. And you sit down with coach and you say, hey, coach, I'm having some real problems. Let's first make sure that we're utilizing resources to make sure that this athlete's okay. Number one, right? If he needs some help, if he needs to sit down with you and me, or you and someone else on the staff that could connect with him, awesome. But after that, then it's, hey, listen, he's either got to be all on board with us, or there's not much I can do for him. And while that truly is a rarity, man, I can't sacrifice a whole program because one person just either doesn't want to do it, doesn't like to do it, or is draining the overall energy out of the group when they come to the weight room. So I think that's a really important point to be made.
Right. Yeah, I know. And I like what you're saying. Like, basically it is a cop out. You can chip away and at least try to make a connection. And it's not going to be right out of the gate lightning fast, especially if you have that many athletes. Like, I know you guys were operating for a long time. Like, it's just going to take learning their names in the beginning, learning like what some of the tendencies are, and really not trying to get everyone to form fit into a certain category. If someone is kind of cerebral and sits back and gets their work done, like, why do you really need to try to turn the thermostat up on them and really change their personality? You're getting everything out of them. Like, why do you need to change how they operate? They're doing everything that they're being told, which is awesome to kind of hear. Kind of going forward, I wanted to touch on a little bit of like you've worked with Hess twice, and he was a director, and you worked under him both at Delaware and at Sam Houston State. And in that time, you've now taken over at Sam Houston State. So when you're kind of going about building like the foundation of a program and almost inheriting it, how do you kind of put your own stamp on it, and at the same time, like put your own philosophy in place, knowing that there probably are a lot of things that like the coach previous to you did well? Like, how do you put your own stamp on it while at the same time either not bashing the coach if it was bad before, or not completely changing it right away if it was good?
Yeah. I'm just so lucky. I'm so lucky to have worked with Hess and working with somebody who came from the same system, the programming side with Augie, and, being really basic with what you do, but also being really aggressive with what you do at times. Kind of the holistic approach that Hill and Carl give you. So when I took over for Hess at Sam Houston, it was really easy because me and him we're on the same page. We're very different, but philosophically we're on the same page. We have it's a binder that we created that Hess did 99% of the work, but we all had a little input on it that I still use. I call it my Bible, but it's just philosophical templates. How I operate on a lot of what I do are basically templates on, a programming template, or a template on how I'm going to approach a group. Now, I'm not good at writing things down and giving speeches, but if I have a template, I understand where I need to start and where I need to go. But working with Hess, it was so easy to take over. Now, the one big reason that Hess had told me he brought me down, he said, the great thing is I'm good at thinking outside the box and seeing things from a different perspective. And I just had a conversation with an intern kind of regarding that notion of, Hess was a programmer. Hess was a sit down, open a book, and make sure that, listen, I have the details. These are the progressions. This is my BOMPA chart. This is my annual plan. This is what I'm doing. This is what our goals are. This is what, this is how we're going to get there. And while that's really, really important, I don't enjoy that. Right. But what was great about me and Hess was he can put something on paper and expect it to get done exactly as it was written on paper. That's his mentality. It's on paper. I got to get it done. What made us work very well together was when, let's say, a variable came in, and we had something planned, and we couldn't do it. It rained. Okay, we want to go do speed and agility, and it rained. Okay, well, do we go out there? Do we, is it safe? Is it not safe? What do we do? And I said, you know what? Scrap it. Let's take some of the ideas of just conditioning, what we were trying to do today, right? We're trying to do some kind of metabolic circuit. We can do that in the weight room, right? Let's not stress out about getting out on the field and executing the plan that you wrote down. Let's go do this. And he was like, and there would be times where we kind of not got after each other, but he really, really wanted to push. Well, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. And I kind of said, well, let's step back. Let's operate outside the box. There are times where, we're playing with velocity-based training 10 years ago, and he's like, well, guys are getting crushed. Like, they're not hitting their speeds on their squat. Like, what do we do? Like, what? I said, just listen, let's do this. Let's go ahead and keep their weight at what they can and turn it into a competition. Who can move it the fastest? And then we take that data and we plug it in and we figure out, okay, where are we? What do we need to do to improve? So, that's where me and him work really, really well together is, while I wasn't very enthusiastic about sitting in front of a computer and programming, in order to be able to step back and think outside the box, you have to. You have to be able to put it on paper. You have to know your basic X's and O's in order to have plan B. If you don't have plan A, you can't have plan B and plan C, right? And that's what I tell my interns. My number one lesson is, hey, write it down, put down a good program, and then as you get into coaching, you understand better. That's when you can start to step back and say, hey, listen, I need to take a detour, right? And that's what made us work so well together. So when he decided that he needed to move on to Army, me and him sat down. The funny thing is we never really sat down. I was at our baseball conference tournament, and it was about 15 minutes before we started our championship game. He called me and he said, hey, Trev, I'm home right now. I'll be back in 2 weeks to pack up my house. I took a job at Army. I said, okay. And, immediately your heart sinks. You go, okay, well, man, I've only been down here for a year. Have I made an impact? Can we do this? And Hess said, don't worry. He said, you have all it takes to take over. And I trusted him. And I think that the reason that I had confidence is because Augie did the same thing to Hess. Augie said, hey, Hess, I want you to come to Delaware because I want you to take over, because I have a plan that won't involve strength and conditioning much longer. And I want to make sure that I kind of mentor you into how to become a head strength coach. I think Hess did the same thing down here. We started having conversations down here at SAM that were way different than we did at Delaware. He went out of his way to introduce me to people, to get me involved with coaches and administrators and donors and all of that. So without me even realizing it, he was kind of grooming me for that point in time. When he left, not much changed. I took over football and I said, guys, this program is going to be very similar. The only thing that wasn't that I think I went a little bit further out on a limb with was, again, handling some of the relationships with some of the athletes and some of the coaches. Hess had a way of convincing the coaches that this is how we're going to do it because it's the best way to do it and we're going to get the best results. I tried to take that same approach, and things had changed just from a personnel standpoint, and I had to kind of reevaluate my approach to the coaches and the athletes on the football side, at least. Everybody else was awesome. It was awesome. We went football that year. We played up at North Dakota State. We played at JMU and North Dakota State in the semifinals. So it was a smooth transition. As far as implementing my own philosophy, it wasn't that different than what me and Hess had established a long time ago. Now it was very different because now everyone's looking to you for answers. When Hess left, I got promoted, and the first thing I did was promote our GA to an assistant, and then they cut our GA. So, we went from Hess and I had a combined 16 years of coaching experience to me and a GA basically, who had a total of like 8 years. So we just lost a lot of years in experience, which again was a challenge for the first few years that I was there, because, we went back to having just 2 strength coaches, taking all 17 varsity sports. And slowly I started to make some changes, things that I was very hard-headed on about, wanting to train all of our teams. We got to train all of our teams. We're the strength and conditioning program. We need to train all of our teams. With the exception of throwers, we're the only ones that we didn't train. And I understood that. Well, we kind of opened the door from there, where at this point we don't train any of our tracks. Their coaches I spent 2 to 3 years dedicating my time, my resources, my expertise to helping their programs, and it didn't work out. And I said, you know what? Sometimes you got to understand that you can't save everything. You can't save it all. So, we started to make some changes and got one team, but really 5 teams off of our plate. And I think that's helped us out. So I guess I hope that answered your question. I don't know. I got lost there for a second, but no, me and Hess worked together for a long time, and it made that transition really, really easy. Because again, he had done a lot of groundwork ahead of time to set me up for success, both in the weight room and in the university community and coaches community at large, where I was 100% accepted from day one. Nobody really felt threatened or scared or felt like the change was going to be something that was going to really impact them. And I thank Hess for it all the time that, it was the fact that, he knew what he was doing when he brought me down here. And even though I didn't, it was a great situation and a great transition.
No, that's awesome to hear, because it's great to have a mentor and someone that, like, especially your head coach, where they're grooming you for their position, and so that you both can take advancements in your career and you can seamlessly kind of flow right into that situation. And honestly, that's a great way to have as your like first director position, where you can take the pieces that he's already like laid the groundwork in there. You can solidify that groundwork and then start to kind of make your stamp on it, which is awesome to hear. And I wouldn't doubt that Hess would do that.
Yeah, and it's also great when you've been working, and this is again another caveat of, I've never started a program from scratch, so that's something I don't have any experience in. But he walked out of his office and he left his filing cabinets full. So it really did make that easy, because I didn't have to come in and figure out, like you look at the little stuff. Well, where do I start with a program? I need to figure out where they are competency level, what can they do, what can't they do, and then, okay, how do we start training? How do we set a base of training? How do we start to get baseline numbers and things like that? Well, I went to the third drawer on the filing cabinet and pulled out everyone's testing numbers and said, okay, guys, here's summer 1, June 1st. We're getting after it. Let's go. So, I'm a little jaded in the fact that I haven't, but I've played with that. And I think that's when you get to a certain level and you start to think above and beyond, hey, how I do it with my assistant Chance. If for some reason I had to leave tomorrow, am I going to fulfill what his expectations are when I leave? Right. And I've talked to him. He's, he loves being in Huntsville, Texas. He's from Texas. I think he would like the opportunity, but I don't think he's convinced me that it's really something that he wants. I think he realizes, hey, listen, if I can be here and stay in this position, that's great. I would love to get paid a little bit more. But so in my mind, I got to figure out how to make sure that at least his sport coaches understand, hey, listen, if I were to leave and they brought somebody else in here, then you need to advocate for Coach Chance, because he's a great guy. And I do it with my administrators too. He's young. He's in the weight room, amazing. You put him in front of a group of people that he doesn't know. Chance grew up in a town of 1,000 people. His graduating high school class was like 75. So Huntsville is a big city to him. So I say, that's just who he is, So, it's my turn to start to understand that I have a responsibility to a lot of other people when and if I do leave the situation. And it's, again, building a relationship with my assistant and making sure that if and or when I do leave, that he's set up in the best possible way to continue here or find another job, maybe at the high school, maybe somewhere else local. But, I set him up to make sure that he's taken care of when I leave.
Right. No, that's a great way to continue to pass it on. and definitely like groom now your assistants for your position. And even if you don't plan on leaving at any point in time, I mean, we talked about Hammer before, like you're either about to get fired or you have been fired at one point. So it's at least good to prepare for both situations, even in the absence of like you're not there for a day. Like, is he able to take over and start to build those things? As you were kind of talking, I was thinking about this a little bit more. Like, did you know before like Hess left, like, hey, I want to be the director, like at some point, or I think I can take this over? Or do you think Hess like kind of saw something specifically in you that he felt confident that you would be competent in that position and be able to take it over? Or do you feel like there's some sort of qualities that are beneficial to a successful director?
I don't think Hess brought me down here specifically with the intention of knowing that he was going to leave in a year. I think he brought me down here because honestly, we had a baseball coach that just got hired who was, for all intents and purposes, approached his program like a football coach. He wanted a football strength coach who wanted to train hard. So that's why he brought me down here. I didn't see, I was completely blindsided. He hadn't talked to me really about it ahead of time. I know that him and his family wanted to be back on the East Coast, and I saw that. I kind of thought, man, well, maybe if there's an opportunity, they'll take it. But I didn't get in his business. I took every day as an opportunity to learn from him and work with him. We had a blast. We had so much fun together. But I hope, he did see qualities that he sat down or called the AD and said, hey, listen, this is why Trevor needs to be the next director. Looking back, and I look back at the biggest mistakes that I've made as faults in the qualities of what make me who I am. I can be hard-headed. I can be stubborn, right? And I've learned to communicate things in different ways, so I don't come off as that. I've learned to listen a lot more than I talk, with coaches and administrators. I've learned that I've learned the best method is to have a notebook and write. I've been in many situations with coaches that they're angry and they say, hey, I need to talk. I say, awesome. And I take a notebook and I sit there and I write, and it actually bothers them. And I say, hey, listen, this is why I'm writing. Because the worst thing you can do during an emotional situation is talk. Really. I mean, if you look at any situation that you may have ever been in that you really say, man, I really regret that, it's because you were emotional and you decided to talk. I sit and I write, and I be as neutral as possible. I'm not necessarily saying, yes, I agree, and I don't say, no, I disagree. I stay as neutral as possible. And if I feel comfortable, and it's taken a lot of time to understand this, when I feel comfortable, I'll respond or I'll defend myself. But most of the time I say, hey, coach, I appreciate the feedback. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the program. I'm going to look at X, Y, and Z factors of why you think this or why you feel that way. And I'm going to get you an answer. I'm going to get you a solid answer. A lot of people think that in arguments or debates or confrontations that you have to have it solved when you walk out of that room. You don't. That's the most important, most valuable aspect that I've learned as a director is you don't have to have that thing solved the moment you walk out of the room. You can come back 5 minutes later. You can come back 10 minutes. You can come back a day later, right? But what you need to do, and I tell my staff, is I will defend you to the end of the day as long as you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted. So before you say anything, before you step in that big hole or that big pile of doo-doo, you need to make sure that you have everything in line, right? If you were wrong, I need you to just sit down and say, this is where I was wrong, right? Because I can't defend. I've learned to play devil's advocate. I sit down, I say, what did you do wrong? Why do they feel that way? Because perspective is reality. That's that person's reality. If you are not working their team hard enough, that's their reality. They don't care. They don't care about minimum effective dose in season and things like this. It's the fact that they just want what they want, and that's their perspective. So you kind of take it. I've learned that every coach I've worked with is narcissistic to a certain point, that they want to be heard, that they want what they want, because rightfully so, it's their program. I'm not being judged on their wins and losses. I don't have a contract that's dictated by their wins and losses. So I have to respect that. And with that being said, I think one of the qualities that I've learned that I made a lot of mistakes early on was trying to defend myself when I felt threatened or during an emotional confrontation, argument, whatever, is I tried to defend myself and I spoke. Big mistake. I've learned that, hey, listen, write it down, because this is the other thing, is being a director, every one of our sport coaches has a direct line to the athletic director. That's the only person that I answer to. So I get a call from him. Hey, so-and-so said this, that, and the other thing. And I said, okay, well, I have the whole conversation pretty much written down. Well, he didn't say this, right? I said, he didn't. He actually didn't, because I have it written down, because I wanted to listen to what his frustrations were without being distracted by having a response. That's really, really important, because then you can go back and now that coach thinks twice before having a tirade with you when you have a notebook in your hand, because he realizes that, man, if I say something out of line, or if this story has to come back through and I have to retell it, I better make sure it's all right, because he has all the notes. It's not to be intimidating, right? It's not to be combative. And I tell them that, listen, I'm not trying to be combative or intimidating. My brain does not function on that level. When I hit a certain point, man, I see red. I do. I have a short temper. But what I've learned is, listen, live to fight another day. Write it down and live to fight another day. So, I hope Hess saw, and I assume he did. He saw some qualities in me that he thought I would make a great director, or at least be able to fill in for him until they figured out who was going to be the right person for the job. But it goes back to the fact that me and Hess had a relationship that built on trust. He trusted me, I trusted him, and we can take it. We can always end by saying we all grew up in the Iron Hoya Nation and learned from pretty much the same 5 people, and all of those same 5 people would probably give you the same response. It's just the right way to do things. You do things the right way, right? And you take into account being a good X's and O's coach, and taking into account that your student athletes are human beings. It just, you really can't go wrong if you understand those 2 concepts.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you did pass the test. I mean, it's been like 5 years, almost 6 years now. So
yeah, 6 years. I mean, we did not, and I'll give you this one. I did have, 3 years ago, our football program went 6-5. They went 7-4, missed the playoffs, and then the next year went 6-5, and I got called into the head football coach's office. And him and the associate head coach sat down, and I mean, the conversation started off with a throat punch, and I immediately saw red, like I said, but I had my notebook. They both sat down and said, hey, I think this situation's turning bad. I don't think you like our team, and I don't think our team likes you. And I said, okay, well, that's a statement to start off the conversation, I guess, and it was little things. On that team, we had 2 NFL kids who were eventually going to be in the NFL. And then we had 2 or 3 kids who ended up with restraining orders against the athletic department.
Right.
It was a lot of personalities to deal with. We were winning at a very high level, and the winning was based on talent, not necessarily the culture of how we were doing things, which I struggled with. If a lift started at 10 o'clock, coach said it was acceptable for kids to walk in at 10:05. And, we had very different opinions on how I was expected to run my weight room. So, and we sat down, we had a long, hard conversation, right? And then I walked right out of that room and I walked into our AD's office and I said, hey, me and Coach Keeler had a conversation, and the resolution is me and my assistant oversee 17 sports. And I'm expected to, at the time I was working with baseball too, and we had gone to a regional the year before and a super regional that year. I mean, we're having success across the board. And I said, my expectation is to, take attention away from baseball, who's wildly successful, and basketball, who just won a conference tournament, because football seems that I'm the issue. I need help. And I said it. And I don't think I swallowed my ego. I stated the fact. We need help. I need help. Because Casey Keeler is going to walk down to your office and say, we need help. So let's all sit down and work this out. And I think that's what it came down to be. I think everybody in the situation realized that we were stressed out because I was being overworked, which is not anything new, right? I was not able to meet the expectations of the football coach, and it frustrated him. And it frustrated me because when you start to lose, it's not about the wins and losses. You look at the kids who've been working their butt off and you say, man, that's not right. We're better than this. But conflict management, you say, okay, what's the answer? What's plan A, B, and C? How do we improve this situation? And, the AD said, okay, I'll look into it. And me and Coach Keeler passed in the hallway, and I knew he was going down there to say the same thing. And a week later, the AD called me and said, hey, we're going to hire somebody to do football only. And I said, hey, I think that's a great idea. And I even called Coach Keeler. I said, hey, listen, I know that we had a pretty heated discussion about commitment and expectations, but we want to hire somebody who's going to come in here and fulfill those expectations for you. And I'm 100% on board. I'm 100%. I will become his assistant strength coach when he gets here in order for us to get back to where we need to be as a football program. So again, it's one of those, I could have took that as a complete negative and blown up, but Huntsville, Texas is where I want to be. And, I've seen a lot of my friends and other strength coaches, they get hitched up with a coach or something, an administrator. And when that coach leaves, man, they're out of a job. I work at the FCS level. I have I'm not going to say none, because that would be a lie. I have very little aspiration to work at a BCS football program or FCS or FBS, whatever they're called. I don't even know what they're called anymore.
Yeah,
or a Power 5 football program, or even a Group of 5 football program, because I love coaching too much. I love coaching. I love building relationships. I like to know that I'm actively trying to build a legacy for Sam Houston State athletics, not just strength and conditioning, but athletics, and say I was part of a great time at Sam. And if I can be here for the next 10 years, a lot of things change when you have a kid, man. I'll tell you. I say, man, I love Texas, but I also don't want to drag him and my wife. She works at Texas A&M. She's got a really good gig. Why chase something bigger, quote unquote, and better when you don't know. I know what to expect down here. I've been down here for 6 years. My AD is not going anywhere anytime soon. I know what to expect. Are there things that I wish I was getting challenged more in? Absolutely. Right? Are there parts of my job that I feel are unfulfilling? Absolutely. But you're going to get that anywhere. But what I know is I have stability and I can control that. Like I said, I went back and got my master's. I probably couldn't do that anywhere else. Right? I said, you know what? I'm feeling unfulfilled. How do I fulfill myself? Well, let me go get my master's because I need that. If I'm going to be an administrator, I need to have my master's. I need for HR to look at my credentials and say, okay, you deserve that, right? Just in case my AD does leave. And another AD comes in and says, man, you're an associate AD and we're paying you as an associate AD and you don't even have your master's? So some of it's being fulfilled in the fact that I want to learn more about higher education, but a lot of it is to make sure that, again, I can maintain the lifestyle that I have here in Texas, Huntsville, Texas. You know what I mean?
No, it's great advice, and it's awesome to hear how you handled that whole situation. Because, I could probably say, since we've known each other for a while, you and me both back in our Georgetown days, if that would have came on our plate when that first had happened, can you imagine the way we would have handled it? It's completely different, and all the different experiences in the background and everything has shaped you into the coach you are to be able to handle that situation the way you did. And
it is funny you say that because it comes to mind is when you're an assistant, you have no worries in the world. Really, you don't. and I'll tell assistant strength coaches, you just need to make sure that you're training your teams. You're not doing anything that's going to get them hurt in the weight room, right? And you need to show progress, right? That's your job. Right? You can I've thrown temper tantrums with Hess. I've thrown temper tantrums. I've told him this is bullshit. I'm not getting paid enough. This is bullshit. I need this. I need that. It's crazy. The things that I did as an assistant. When you become a director, you can't do that anymore.
No, for sure.
You can't. And it's like you look back and you go, and then I look and you ask the question, well, what do you think Hess saw in me to make me to say that I was ready to be a director? And I look at some of the crazy shit that I did, and I was like, why in the world would he put his faith in me? But I think he realized, again, when you get to that level, listen, man, you know more. I know more about behind the scenes, administrative, even at the university level, of why we're not getting what we need, and there's nothing we can do, right? Control what you can control. I tell my athletes that all the time. I tell everyone that. I tell my wife that. Control what you can control. Now that I know that there's a lot of things I can't control, it makes me rest easier at night. It doesn't help my assistant, who's still making $29,000 a year or whatever he's making, but I know that, hey, listen, Chance, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to everything that you have to say. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to write it down, and I'm actually going to go talk to people about it, because your perception is your reality. And it's crazy that we work this hard and have this much success that everybody else wants to gloat, and every coach wants to say, well, we're successful, right? Well, we are an integral part of that. And that's part of standing up for your department, is saying, hey, listen, I don't want to be on the front page. I don't want to be interviewed. But at some point behind closed doors, I want you to come up and say, hey, Chance, we couldn't have done it without you. That's it. That's all I need. I don't need a medal. I don't need rings. If you didn't give me another ring, I don't care, right? As long as those athletes are successful and the coaches see that what we do and the massive amount of effort we put into their programs in some way, shape, or form has supported their success. That's it. I don't need to, and I guess that's probably one of the reasons why, like I said, Huntsville, Texas is home. Not saying I'll never take another job, but it'll take a lot to get me to move out of here, because I have a family and this is going to be our home for a while. But I don't need, you read my resume. I don't think I've singled out any name or specific event that I've I've accomplished something. When I want to make it look good, yeah, I say went to Sweet 16 with women's basketball and national championship appearances with football and things like that. But, I do that because you kind of have to, because other people take value in that. And sometimes you just kind of have to swallow the fact that, okay, that's not who I am. It's who I have to be because I have to sell myself.
Yeah, those are definitely two different distinctions that you kind of have to play the role for. But I think you summed it up real well. Like the well intentions of and the mark of a coach are what you said. Like, don't need to be in the front page or in the limelight. Like a quick thank you, like passing by. Like it's really all we want. We just want the success of the athletes, and like you said, to build relationships with them and see them be successful. And that's really all it comes down to. And you can do that at any level. You can do that at any school. It doesn't matter. Like if you find something like you have and you're comfortable in that situation and you found ways to challenge yourself and like you said, control the things you can control, and you've taken ownership over the ones you can, like pursuing your master's and finding different ways to challenge yourself without just completely turning the tables and jumping ship to somewhere else, because you're going to find problems at those as well. And right now you have something good going, so why don't you just build on the things that are good? So hey, I wanted to shift gears a little bit too, kind of talking about like from our Georgetown days, the old office, quote unquote, where the desks were, like the old school days where the weight room and the office were the exact same thing. So
Yeah.
we kind of know a thing or two about just kind of getting on the floor and training. And I know you've been involved in Strongman and you've done a bunch of push-pull meets as well. So how has training kind of evolved over your career? And then I know you're not competing as much as you were lately. Your roles have completely changed. So how do you find ways to continue to still train and stay active and basically just lead by example for your student athletes?
Yeah. One comment about that Georgetown situation is you could not, the reason I loved it is because you couldn't close an office door. You were literally involved in anything that happened on the floor. There was no way around it. So when athletes walked in to work out, the group of desks were sitting in front of platform number one. There was no way for you to not be involved. That was awesome, right? Because at any point, Carl can say, "Hey, I need help on a side spot." Boom. Well, you can't close your office door. You can't, like, you're there. Like you're there and you're available for everything, right? And when staff lifts, I mean, it was awesome because we all had a schedule that we can lift together. But if you were like, "Hey, listen, I got to finish writing something up," and everybody else is out there lifting, everyone's just staring at you. Everyone's staring at you. And I mean, it was kind of a joke, but it's like nothing that you're doing right now is more important than lifting, even though it probably was. But it was like, it's kind of thing. It kind of stinks to have to sit at this desk while everybody else is out there having fun. My training, I got really big. So this is kind of, because this is a recent kind of event. So about 12 years ago, when I was done playing football, I said I tore my ACL. Well, I tore my ACL and I walked away from football, and I said, you know what? Let's just I partially tore it. I said, let's just do some rehab and see if we can't just lift. I'm done playing. I just don't want to play anymore. So for 12 years, I walked around on a partially torn ACL. And from what the doctors can probably say, I probably walked around for 3 or 4 years on a partially torn ACL, and then it tore the rest of the way. But in that last 12 years, I've done Strongman. I've done 4 Strongman competitions in my life. Done one push-pull where it was just kind of at a home gym that we did as a staff. So I've competed and I've learned that people say, well, we're going to go train. We're going to go train. What are you training for? Right? Because if you're not training for something, you're just working out. Okay. So, and that was a big Augie thing is, train for something. And now I'm Carl Johnson. Don't call it training. You don't get to call it training unless you're training for something, right? So right now, technically, I work out now, because there's not much else I can do. This summer, I had 4 or 5 bone spurs taken out of my knee because after I tore my ACL, my body decided that in order to kind of create stability and compensate for not having ACL, I was going to grow a whole bunch of funky bone around my knee. And it got to the point where I couldn't work out. I couldn't. It was so painful. So I went in knowing that in probably the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to get a whole new knee, and hopefully make it till 40 before I get a knee replacement. But this was kind of a Band-Aid to get it fixed. I've had spondies. I've had a spondy in my life. I have a torn labrum. Like I said, I'm dealing with the fact that I don't have an ACL and I had bone spurs. That's what's really changed my perspective about training and working out and coaching. It's made me a better coach. It's made me communicate on a better level with athletic trainers, right? I know my limits. I know what I can and I can't do. What the most important thing is through the whole process is after I got my spondy, I kind of was like, all right, go to PT for a few weeks and said, this is stupid. And then I went out and picked up a Stuart McGill book and said, okay, let's start from ground zero, right? And I bought a book, Brian Carroll? It's called The Gift of Injury. And that's how I kind of attribute my training now is the gift of injury. Things that you didn't do when you were younger will rear its ugly head when you're older, right? I can still go and grab a bar with 135, dead cold, and work up to 405, right? 405 comfortably, knowing every day if I had to walk out to a bar, I could pick up 405. Some days probably 450, maybe a little bit higher. I don't know. But I know I can do that. But I also know for the next week, I won't be able to walk because I didn't warm up properly, right? And even warm-ups, movement prep. I've gotten so many good ideas of how to make sure that my goal also when I write programs is how to make sure that my athletes don't go through what I went through. Because the highs have been really high, the lows have been really, really low. When you look at yourself and you say, I'm a shell of what I used to be. I just went back through my YouTube channel. I squatted 655 to a high box with a squat suit on, right? I squatted 700 with a squat suit on. I look back and I go, I can't squat 135 to a high box without my hips feeling like absolute dog crap for the next 2 days, right? The only thing that I'm really reduced now to is I can still do all my upper body presses and I can deadlift. And I deadlift 2 to 3 times a week. Just because that's the only thing that makes me happy anymore is the fact that I can deadlift and I can bench. So my training has evolved in that way, and I've figured out what I can and can't do, and I have to really limit myself to that. I mean, think about this. Think about being a coach and not being able to demo a reverse lunge, right? Like that gets awkward, and I try not to make it awkward, but in my mind, I'd say, hey, listen, well, we're going to do we were doing something. I forget what it was the other day. And, you just automatically in your mind say, okay, well, I know Ashley over there, she's my most confident lifter. So when I need something demoed, she can demo it for me. But it's like, she was on the other side of the room and was like, hey, I need to demo this, rear foot elevated split squat. Shit. And I mean, I had to, let's go. And it was just a body weight rear foot elevated split squat. So, I've gotten back up there. My goal is to get really, really, really strong in deadlift. This past summer I made a stone for the first time in a long time, so I have a stone in my garage that it's about 250 where, if I go out there and get warmed up, I can move it. I can put it up on I built a 48-inch box and I can put it up on there. But it takes some work to do that, I'm a shell of what I used to be as far as training, but I train. I don't use that as an excuse. Some days I go out on the floor and I get on a bike and I do all kinds of correctives. I do an hour of correctives, just hip stuff and ankle stuff, things like that. And that's my workout for the day. And honestly, sometimes it gets, kind of gets me gassed out. I'm like, wow, that was pretty tough. But I know if I do that, then that's kind of, when we talk about coaching, that's kind of my insurance. Make sure you warm up and you do post work and activation and correctives. And that's how you can that's the only way you can kind of guarantee that you're going to be at an optimal training level for the next session. Well, guess what? That's real. That's real. I have to stretch after every lift. I used to be able to throw my knee sleeves and hop in the shower and come out and go with the rest of my day. I can't do it. I have to stretch. I have to make time. So sometimes when I have an hour, it's like, well, I have 20 minutes to warm up and I have 15 minutes to stretch at the end. Man, I got 25 minutes to do what I need to do. So that my training has changed a lot in terms of that. But I'm still trying to be strong. I'm trying to be strong. My goal again is, I have goals. I want to bench 365 and I want to get back up to being able to deadlift 500 again. I'm right now about 65, 75, 80 pounds away from that on deadlift, because again, I'm about 6 months out from some pretty significant bone surgery in my knee, and things are just slowly creeping back up. But it doesn't mean just because I'm a shell of my one self doesn't mean that I don't have goals. And a lot of the goals are, I've always said this. I don't know if I've made this up or somebody said this, but as a strength coach, you need to make sure that you always have one thing that you have the upper hand on any athlete that walks in, right? Any athlete, there's one thing that if it came down to it and some tough football player wanted to get in your grill and be like, I challenge you to something, you can come back and say, I challenge you to this because you know you're going to win. And that's grip. So, I still train grip on a really high level, and to stay in shape because I have a kid and I eat a lot of kid food now, and I'm not in great shape. The assault bike sucks, but, I spent some time on the assault bike and realized that, man, it's a gut check. It's something that you really can get after. And for a while, there was only 2 or 3 athletes. I do 100-calorie fitness test on an assault bike, and there was only at the time only 5 athletes that can get their 100-calorie assault bike time faster than mine. So in my mind, it's like, okay, cool. Like I can still compete with Division I athletes on an assault bike. It's dumb. I hate it. It sucks. But there's still a competitor in me that says, listen, I want to still be able to get on that one day when a kid says, oh, it's impossible to get it under this time, and me go do it and say, no, it's not. Right. And then also have that one thing when a kid starts saying, oh, I'm the best at everything, squat 700 pounds, and I go and do a hub lift on a 25-pound plate and watch him just get stoned on it and be like, okay, you're not the best at everything, So that's where I am now. Just, staying optimistic about it. I'm not dead yet. So, I'm going to keep trying to find ways to get stronger in anything I can figure out. If it comes with throwing a med ball, I don't know. Just every day I got to find a reason to say, hey, listen, I need to train because I need to get stronger. Because again, I'm not in a wheelchair. I got my arms work, my legs work. So let's go out there and get it done.
I love it. No, that's great to hear. I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff between like training and working out and like your experience and I like finding one thing that you can have the upper hand on. I definitely having so many teams, you got to find a really good one then, because I know some of my guys can jump through the roof and grip is hard, especially when you got wrestlers too. Those guys got like little menacing hands that squeeze.
Yeah.
So I got to find, usually I'll find something like strongman equipment related that they just have never touched. So like, yeah, I could beat you at any of that stuff. Easy. No, but that's cool. Hey, so we end the show like any good training session. I'm not going to make you get on the assault bike today, but especially after the weekend you've had. So we got 4 quarters, 4 questions for our finisher, and then maybe some overtime. So you can answer them as quick as you want, or you could take your time. But you ready?
Yes, sir. Let's get it going.
All right, here we go. So biggest influence in strength and conditioning and biggest influence in strength sports?
Casmeyer, Bill Casmeyer.
For both of them?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the first. He was one of the first strong people I ever witnessed. I watched a lot of sports when I was a kid and said, man, these guys are really athletic and things like that. But they were in those late 80s, mid to late 80s, I guess, and even in the 90s, those guys were strong, like picking up fridges and running down the street. It was like, these guys are strong. And then like his eyes and his traps, I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like that is awesome. Like that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like even now, like I think it goes back to my grip thing. Like I can, like relatively speaking, there's a lot of things that I could probably just go grab with my hands and pick up. And it's like, yeah, that's why I love strongman, because you know what? I'm not great at the traditional lifts. I'm not great at cleans. Definitely not great at cleans. Can't snatch for my life. Squatting, I was always average. But, you know, when you go to a gym, and it's happened to me a lot, and you see guys that are like really, really strong, and they did a squat session, you're kind of like, all right, you know, I'm just trying to hang. And then you go and you see stones in the corner. You go, oh, you guys got stones? You're like, oh, yeah, nobody ever really uses them. And you walk over there and you pick up, you know, a 200 or 250 pound stone. And you're like, oh man, these are cool. And the guys are like, that's crazy. I haven't seen anyone move those things in a while. And you're like, yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Like, strongman really, 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 I mean, it's awesome. You know, I like the fact that I was not good at traditional lifts, but being able to pick up weird things and throw them and move them impressed people who were strong. And I said, you know what, I'm not as strong as you, but it's kind of cool that you can kind of give me props for, you know, picking up that stone or throwing that kettlebell or keg over that bar or whatever it is, you know. Bill Casmeyer, Marius Pujanowski. Marius was another one that when I was like, wow, like that guy's crazy. You know, I never got to really see John Paul Sigmarsson, you know, in competition live. You know, but you know, obviously he paved the way for, I mean, really, really strong guys. And even back then, you look at those guys, man, like they were 300. I mean, I don't know how much Marius Pujanowski was, but I mean, he was 300 pounds. These guys now, I mean, you know, they were doing a lot of the same stuff these guys are doing now. And these guys are Brian Shaw's 440 pounds. You know, like Eddie Hall, like, you know, you watch some of the recent stuff with Eddie Hall, and he's like, dude, you know, I want to be strong. I want to be the strongest man in the world, but I also didn't want to sweat when I sat up from the couch. You know, I didn't want to have to be on a CPAP machine. I didn't want to, you know, my life was shitty, you know. So yeah, those guys are they're my biggest influences. And really, you know, from who I look up to, those guys.
Speaking to my heart. Hey, so when you're not coaching or training, what are some of your hobbies outside of the weight room?
Hunting. So I got down to Texas hunting. Hunting is really cool. If you don't know about Texas, East Texas especially, we have an unruly feral hog population. And I have a really good buddy who owns a cattle ranch. And he loses $100,000 to $200,000 a year in the damage that these hogs do. So we call it hog eradication. It's not. I'll tell you, it's not like hunting that most people think about. For Christmas, I bought myself a thermal vision scope. So now I can walk around in the middle of a field in the middle of the night, and I mean it's pretty much daylight, and they have no idea that you're there. For those people who aren't into hunting, it might seem pretty vicious, but I mean it's a really bad problem, but it's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of skill and technique and understanding. It was something that I had to learn about, understanding the movement patterns of hogs and things like that. And but it's something that's a hobby that it helps out the local community. But hunting is, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to getting good at shooting. There's a lot of training that goes behind it. I don't bow hunt, but I follow Cam Haynes, run, shoot, lift. And you're looking at a guy who could hit a bullseye at 200 yards with an arrow, which is unheard of. I don't know if I could hit a bullseye with my rifle at 200 yards, which is crazy, But hunting is a lot of fun. I've only done it once, but down here you hunt with dogs, which means that you put tracking collars on a gang of dogs and you just let them loose in the woods, and they corner the hog, and you walk within the close proximity of the hog, and you eradicate that hog. But it's crazy because there are people that, I mean, that's their life. They get paid by people to do this. But it's also a great sport. With hunting and a lot of hunting conservation, you can only take so many deer in a year and duck and things like that. There's a lot of regulation, which is good. But the hogs are something you can do year round. Number one is why I like it. I can go out any day of the week and go hunt a hog. But it also helps out with the population, and it's fun. It's fun. You get to go shoot guns, Texas. Which is cool in Texas.
There you go. I like it. Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what would you be doing? And I'm going to flip it on you for this one too. Your favorite strongman event?
If I wasn't coaching, what would I be doing? Bro, I don't know. That's the scary thing. I think that's a really scary question. Going back to Todd Hammer, there's two types of coaches in this world: ones that have been fired and ones that haven't been fired yet. And from what I understand, his situation, everything was going well until it wasn't going well. I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. Man, if I wasn't coaching, what would I be doing? You know what? I would like to work on a golf course. I would like to be a grounds crew on a golf course. I'd like to still get up at 5 a.m. and go sit on a tractor and mow greens and grass with my headphones on, right? Being outside. I think that's the other reason I like hunting, and I love Texas, is 90% of the stuff that you do outside, except for when it's 115 degrees. Even then you're outside. I like being outside. So something like that, honestly, something pretty mindless, I guess. I don't know, something where I'm just sitting on a mower, or go work as a ranch hand where I can bale hay and things like that. But something that I can be outside. And I guess I say that off the top of my head because I love cutting my grass. So my favorite strongman event. Whew. I was always the ones I was really good at were the frame carries and most handled carries, I was always good at. Again, I had really, really good grip. And if the handles were high enough that I didn't have to pick it up all the way off the ground, then I was relatively strong from a quarter of the way up. So those were the ones I was really good at. I don't know, man. I know everyone's gonna probably cringe, but like the Conan's wheel, because it's something that you don't get a lot of. But I mean, it's the one thing that, I mean, you can go until you can't go anymore. An axle deadlift or a clean and press or a log even. Like there's a point where you kind of get to, technical failure, which leads to all kinds of different stuff. And it gets really, really heavy. But I mean, the first time I ever did it in competition with Carl, I mean, he was like, put your headphones in, just listen to music. And I just, and I did. And when I woke up after I passed out, I was like, how far did I go? You didn't win, but you went pretty far. That or some kind of a Husafeld stone carry. Again, something where you're moving, and it's kind of more of a timed event. I like to kind of feel like I've emptied the tank on, hey, listen, it was just holding on to something and walking with it. I mean, that's it. So those two.
I like it. All right. Hey, so we set up an ideal training day for you. What's your go-to PR song or music for the training session? And what's your post-training meal look like?
What's his name? Michael Bolton, How Can We Be Lovers If We Can't Be Friends? That's my max out song. Has been for a long time. There's emotion in that song that gets you there. Post workout meal, since I'm down here, gotta be tacos. There's a place in town. It's called Mr. Hamburger. Mr. Hamburger, you get the Cajona burger, which is a triple stack, and they make their own fries and a Dr. Pepper. So that, or I mean, any of the taco place. Come down here and get some tacos. I mean, I've eaten more tacos since I've been down here than I had my whole life, and they're good, man. They're good. Yeah, it's funny. The Max song is funny because it started as a joke when, like, other guys are Lamb of God and all these other things, and I put that on, and kind of everybody in the weight room like looks, and they're like, what is going on? And then you hit something pretty heavy, and they're like, that was impressive. I was listening to an old recording with Dave Tate, and he said how he used to, on really, really, really heavy days, he used to put on like Miley Cyrus on his headphones, and like after he squatted till absolute exhaustion, like he'd pull the plug out of his iPhone and it would be playing, and everybody's just like would look at him and be like, that's weird. But I think it's funny. I think it's funny that as much as music has a huge impact on my life and my training, so does comedy and irony, I guess.
There you go. I like that. Hey, so the last one I got for you for overtime. Most valuable piece of advice you've received, and if you want to, you can share from who.
Oh man, most valuable piece of advice. I get a lot of advice. Most valuable piece of advice. Listen. I mean, listen. There's the old adage, you're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth because you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. Like, I think that I've learned that, and it's something that I've finally just believed in. But listen to your athletes, right? You want to make assumptions. Assumptions happen when you don't listen, right? And slow down. Slow down. I just had a conversation with an intern who left, and he went to go work at Iowa Northern D3 school. No, and he was like, hey, listen, this is a job. I want a full-time job. I said, okay, just slow down. I'm not saying don't take it, but slow down. Being young and just rushing into things. Luckily, I had a very clear vision. And I don't know why, I've had a very clear vision of what I wanted, whether it was a month ahead of time or 2 or 3 months ahead of time. Like right now, I had a clear vision. Right now, I want to do everything I can to stay at Sam Houston, right? That's it. Everything else will hopefully fall into place. And I told him the same thing. I said, you have a vision. You want to go get this experience, then make sure that you take it slow. They're going to call you and say, hey, you want this position? If you want it, still, hey, can I have the night to think about it? Because I want to make sure that everything will work out for me to be successful up there. Slow down. Don't be in such a rush all the time. I even do it with training. I have a group volleyball the other day. Came in, they were 15 minutes late because coach had a meeting with them, and there was another team stacked up behind them. So I only had really 40 minutes to get their training in. And instead of trying to get it all in and being rushed and in a hurry and moving fast, I said, hey, listen, what we're going to do today is we're going to take 3 exercises and we're going to do them perfectly. We are going to take them and we're going to add extra rest. We're going to do some mobility to make sure that it was cleaning or something. We're going to really get our lats and our wrists nice and loose, and we're going to get after it. But slow down. Like sometimes I talk to our baseball coach, addition through subtraction. I think sometimes we just get so involved in what we want to do and the what's new, triphasic or tier. I mean, like what we want to move so fast, and understanding that maybe doing a real triphasic program or a French contrast derivation isn't going to fit in the time block that you really have. So how do I change it? How do I slow it down to incorporate the aspects that I need to get the training effect that I need, right? Instead of going out there and buying a book and saying, this is what the book says, this is what I need to do, man, you need to slow down and figure out what fits for you. I think that's training, coaching, life. Don't be in such a hurry to move to the next stage. It's going to happen. It's going to happen whether you want it to, whether you're ready for it. I think the biggest blessing of COVID is I've spent the first year of my son's life here with him. I've only had to work 6 months out of the last year, really. He's 15 months now, and I've got to slow down. And people say, well, it goes fast. And I go, yeah, it does. But you know what? I've enjoyed all the steps that we've taken because I've got to be there. So I guess biggest piece of advice, listen and slow down.
No, that's great advice. I think you can apply that to anything, just like you said. And the COVID has had some blessings in it. And I'm glad that you were able to do that and kind of hang out with him. So, hey, so how can people get a hold of you if they've got any further questions? How can people follow you and hopefully see you training and not digging out bone spurs going forward?
Well, this is the thing. I got to get better on my Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm what the kids call a troll. I don't post things, but I look at it every day. I've gotten into this past week. I've actually gotten back into videoing in my training a little bit. So I got to do a better job. If there are people out there that really want to see it for some reason, I'll start to post some stuff. But I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. But really, shoot me an email. My email is tcw025@shsu.edu. I'm sure you can put that in your thing. You're pretty good at this stuff, technology. But it's an open door. My facility is an open door. at some point in the future, I'd like to do a clinic, and I will take some advice that you gave earlier and reach out to kind of our coaching tree and make sure that everyone's involved in that. But if you're ever, I'm an hour north of Houston, 45 minutes north of the Houston airport, 3 hours south of Dallas. Austin's about 3 hours. I really am in the kind of middle of nowhere, but if you ever find yourself in Houston driving to Dallas or vice versa, Sam Houston State is right off the highway. But if for some reason you want to come down and visit, or you're local and you're doing a tour or whatever, come visit. My door is always open. My house is open. Like I said, this is such a destination that if you come on a Friday or Saturday, I will take you to Leona's General Store and buy you a steak the size of your face, or take you to Mr. Hamburger for lunch and get you a burger that's the size of your face, or take you to the food truck and get you a burrito the size of your face. Whatever you're into, come visit. My door's always open. My phone, shoot me an email, and I have no problem getting on the phone and talking with you and answering any questions that you might have.
That's awesome. And it's Texas meal plans sound like right up my alley. I like that. The sizing, the portions, that's what I want.
You get Tuesdays, you get dollar taco. It's all Texas is awesome. Texas is a lot of fun. If you're a hunter and you want to come down, I can do some guided hunts and things like that. If that's what you're into, whatever you want, we can figure it out. There's enough open space in Texas. If you just want to go shoot a gun somewhere, you go shoot a gun, or like I said, drink beers or whiskey or vodka, whatever you drink, we can drink it.
Right on. Hey, well, Trevor, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. It's been great to catch up, and I mean, you dropped a lot of knowledge in this and a lot of valuable advice that I think that people can take away from, whether being an assistant or being a director, like transitioning into that role, or just training and finding their own kind of coaching voice. It's been great to catch up, and I appreciate you coming on today, man.
Thank you for having me, and Nick, thanks for doing this. This is something that like I told you before we started, is important for at least right now our coaching circle, to get out and stay in touch with each other. I know that there's an audience out there that's going to listen to this, but it's me and you having a conversation. And I appreciate you stepping outside of your comfort zone to get this started. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck as you progress with this.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks again, and take care, bud.
All right, buddy.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors, Cerberus Strength. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.